You've been driving for 40 years, maybe 50. You've never caused a serious accident. You know how to handle rain, snow, traffic, and impatient drivers half your age. So imagine standing at the DMV counter expecting a simple renewal and instead hearing the words, "I'm sorry, we can't renew your license today." No warning, no explanation you were prepared for, just a stack of papers, a list of requirements you've never heard of, and the sinking feeling that something fundamental just shifted beneath your feet. This isn't about forgetting a document. It's not about a long line or a bad photo. It's about three new DMV rule changes quietly rolling out across the country that are affecting drivers over 65 in ways most people don't see coming. Stricter vision screenings that go beyond the old eye chart, mandatory in-person renewals that eliminate the convenience of mail or online options, and in some states, medical certification forms that require your doctor to formally sign off on your ability to drive. For many drivers, the shock isn't failing a test, it's discovering the rules changed at all, and by the time they find out, they're already standing at the counter. If your license is your independence, your freedom to get groceries, see friends, attend appointments, and live life on your own terms, then you cannot afford to walk into that situation unprepared. Because what's happening right now isn't a small administrative tweak, it's a shift in how states evaluate drivers 65 and older, and the details matter more than ever. Hi, I'm Sophia, and for years I've helped people navigate complicated government policies and regulatory changes that most folks don't hear about until they're already affected. And let me tell you something clearly and calmly. This is not about panic, it's about preparation. These new DMV rules didn't appear overnight, and they're not designed to punish anyone, but they are expanding state by state. And if you're over 65, understanding them now puts you in control instead of on the defensive. In this video, we're going to walk through exactly what these three major changes are, why states are implementing them, how they could affect your renewal process, and most importantly, what you can do right now to protect your license and your independence. Some states have adopted all three rules. Some have adopted one or two. A few haven't yet, but the trend is clear and more are moving in this direction every year. By the end of this, you won't just know what's changing. You'll know how to prepare, what questions to ask, and how to walk into that DMV confident instead of caught off guard. Because when it comes to your ability to stay on the road, information truly is power. Before we break down each of these new rules, we need to talk about why this is happening at all. Because without that context, it can feel personal. It can feel like someone in an office somewhere decided that once you hit a certain birthday, you suddenly became a problem. That's not what this is. Over the past several years, data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has shown a noticeable increase in certain types of accidents involving drivers over 75. Not reckless speeding, not aggressive driving. In fact, older drivers as a group are often more cautious and less likely to drive under the influence than younger age brackets. The patterns showing up in the data are more specific. Difficulty with left-hand turns at busy intersections, increased crash severity due to physical fragility, challenges driving at night, slower reaction times in high-speed merge situations, and perhaps most significant of all, age-related vision decline that often goes unnoticed because it happens gradually. Peripheral awareness narrows slowly, contrast sensitivity weakens subtly, depth perception shifts little by little. None of that makes someone irresponsible. But from a legislative standpoint, when trends start appearing across thousands of data points, states respond. Lawmakers face pressure to show they are addressing roadway safety, especially as the population over 65 continues to grow rapidly. And instead of targeting individual behavior, many states chose age-based screening thresholds as the policy tool. That's the landscape we're in now. It's not about labeling older drivers as unsafe. It's about risk management through screening. Whether we like that approach or not, it explains why these changes are expanding rather than shrinking. Now let's talk about the first major rule change. And this one is more significant than most people realize. Enhanced vision screening requirements. For decades, renewing your license typically meant walking up to that familiar machine, reading a line of letters or numbers, maybe covering one eye, and if you could meet the 20/40 standard in at least one eye, you were on your way. Simple, quick, predictable. But in at least 23 states, that process has evolved into something far more comprehensive, specifically for drivers 65 and older. Instead of testing only visual acuity, how clearly you see straight ahead, DMVs are now evaluating multiple aspects of visual performance. That includes peripheral vision, which measures how well you detect movement and objects outside your direct line of sight. It includes depth perception, which affects how accurately you judge distance between vehicles. And increasingly, it includes contrast sensitivity, which may be the most underestimated factor of all. Contrast sensitivity determines how well you can distinguish an object from its background, particularly in low light or low contrast environments. Think about driving at dusk when the sky and the road blend into similar shades. Think about rain-soaked pavement reflecting headlights. Think about a pedestrian wearing dark clothing at twilight. You might still have technically good eyesight by traditional standards, and yet struggle in those scenarios because contrast perception has declined. These enhanced screenings are designed to catch that. Here's where this becomes practical. In many states, if you don't meet one component of this expanded screening, you're not immediately denied, but you also don't walk out renewed. Instead, you're issued a conditional approval. That means you're given anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending on your state, to obtain a comprehensive eye examination from a licensed optometrist or ophthalmologist. That specialist must complete specific DMV documentation and submit it directly. During that window, your driving privileges may be temporarily limited or pending review. And here's the part many people don't anticipate. Medicare does not always cover vision exams that are required solely for licensing purposes rather than medical diagnosis. So now you're looking at additional appointments, potential out-of-pocket costs, and added time pressure, all of which could have been avoided with early preparation. The smartest strategy is not to wait for the DMV to be the first place you learn there's an issue. If your license renewal is within 6 months, schedule a comprehensive eye exam now, not a quick prescription update, a full evaluation. Ask specifically about peripheral field testing. Ask about contrast sensitivity. Ask whether your night vision has measurably declined. If corrective lenses can improve a borderline result, you want that adjustment before you're under a renewal deadline. I've heard from drivers who assumed their renewal would take 20 minutes and instead spent 2 hours navigating unexpected paperwork only to leave without a renewed license. That's not a failure on their part. That's a planning gap, and planning is something you can control. If you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, take a moment to subscribe so you stay updated as more states adopt changes like these. Policies are evolving quickly, and staying informed before your renewal date can make all the difference. Now, because vision screening is only the first layer, and what happens during in-person renewals may surprise you even more, we need to talk about the second rule change next. Now, let's move to the second major change. And in many ways, this one is catching more people off guard than the vision screenings. For decades, once you reached a certain age and had a clean driving record, renewing your license could often be done by mail or online. It was simple. You filled out a form, confirmed your information, maybe updated a photo periodically, and that was it. No long lines, no waiting rooms, no rearranging your day. But in at least 18 states now, that convenience disappears once you hit a certain age threshold, typically 65 or 70. And in 12 of those states, once you reach 75, renewal cycles shorten dramatically. What used to be an 8-year license may now become 4 years, in some cases 2. That means more frequent trips to the DMV, more paperwork, and more scrutiny. On the surface, this sounds like a logistical inconvenience, a longer drive, a few hours in line. But here's what most people don't realize. The in-person requirement is not just about updating your file. DMV staff in many states are now trained to conduct what's called an informal functional assessment during the renewal process. It's not announced, it's not labeled as a test, but it is happening. They observe how you enter the building. Are you steady on your feet? Do you appear disoriented? They watch how you respond to instructions. Are you confused by basic paperwork? Do you struggle to understand simple questions? They're assessing cognition, awareness, and physical stability, not in a clinical way, but in a practical, real-world way. Because from the state's perspective, if someone cannot navigate the renewal process independently, that may signal challenges behind the wheel. Now, this doesn't mean someone using a cane or walker automatically raises red flags. In fact, using mobility support confidently often signals safety awareness. What triggers concern is visible instability combined with confusion, agitation, or inability to follow instructions. And if an employee feels there are legitimate concerns, they have authority in many states to require additional steps before issuing a renewal. That might mean a written test, even if you haven't taken one in decades. It might mean a road test. It could mean a referral for medical clearance. And in some cases, it results in a restricted license, perhaps limiting driving to daylight hours or within a certain radius of home. Let's also talk about documentation, because this is where many people stumble unnecessarily. Real ID standards have tightened requirements across the country. Most DMVs now require your current license, proof of residency dated within the last 90 days, often a paper utility bill or bank statement, your social security card or W-2, and in some cases, a birth certificate or passport. And here's the frustrating part. Not all proof is treated equally. Some offices won't accept printed cell phone statements. Some reject digital-only documents. I've heard from drivers who made a 40-minute trip only to be turned away over one missing paper. That's not just inconvenient, it's exhausting. Preparation here is everything. Organize your documents in a clearly labeled folder. Double-check your state's website for acceptable proof of residency. Arrive early, get adequate rest beforehand. Take your time completing forms. There is no advantage to rushing. The goal is to demonstrate clarity, organization, and calm. Think of the in-person renewal as more than paperwork. It's a presentation of your capability, and when you treat it that way, you significantly reduce the chance of unnecessary complications. If this information is useful, consider sharing this video with someone in your life who's approaching renewal age. Many drivers don't realize these changes exist until they're already in line, and a little awareness goes a long way. Now, we need to talk about the third rule change, and this is the one creating the most anxiety in the states where it's been implemented. Medical certification requirements in at least 14 states. Drivers over a certain age, usually 70 or 75, must submit a formal medical evaluation as part of the renewal process. And this isn't a casual note from your doctor saying, "Patient is doing fine." This is a state-issued document with detailed questions about specific health conditions, medications, and functional abilities related directly to driving. The form often asks about diabetes, particularly if insulin is involved due to the risk of hypoglycemia. It asks about cardiovascular history, heart attacks, strokes, uncontrolled blood pressure. It addresses seizure disorders, sleep apnea, cognitive impairment, Parkinson's disease, and any condition that could affect motor control or reaction time. It also asks about medications known to cause drowsiness, dizziness, or slowed reflexes. Your physician must review your history and provide a professional opinion on whether you are medically fit to operate a vehicle safely. Here's what makes this complicated. Your doctor is not just offering a friendly recommendation. They are placing their professional license and liability on the line if they sign off on a patient who later causes a serious accident tied to a documented medical condition that can carry legal consequences. So they will approach these forms cautiously. They are ethically obligated to be honest. That means if there have been episodes of fainting, uncontrolled blood sugar swings, memory concerns, or medication side effects, those details may be noted, but this does not automatically mean losing your license. In many cases, it results in conditions rather than revocation. For example, someone managing diabetes well might be approved with more frequent renewal intervals. A driver with mild night vision decline may receive a daylight-only restriction. A person on sedating medication might be cleared with documentation that dosing does not interfere with driving hours. The key is communication. If your state requires medical certification, schedule a dedicated appointment with your physician specifically for this form. Do not try to squeeze it into the last 5 minutes of an annual checkup. Bring the paperwork with you. Be transparent about your driving habits. If you avoid highways or night driving, say that if you've had minor parking lot incidents, disclose them honestly. When physicians understand your real-world driving patterns, they can make more accurate assessments. And if your doctor raises concerns, resist the urge to become defensive. Ask questions instead. What specifically worries them? Are there adjustments that could reduce risk? Could physical therapy improve mobility? Could a medication timing change eliminate drowsiness during driving hours? Often, there are solutions that preserve independence while addressing safety. All three of these rule changes, enhanced vision screening, mandatory in-person renewals, and medical certification requirements, share one underlying theme. Early preparation prevents crisis decisions. When you walk into renewal proactively rather than reactively, the process shifts dramatically in your favor. And in a moment, we're going to talk about how these rules vary by state and what steps you should take right now to protect yourself before your next renewal date arrives. Now, here's something critically important that often gets lost in conversations like this. There is no single nationwide DMV rulebook for drivers over 65. We live in a federal system. That means each state sets its own licensing standards within broad federal guidelines. So while trends are emerging across the country, the exact details, the age thresholds, the renewal frequency, the type of screening required vary significantly depending on where you live. For example, one state may require in-person renewal starting at 70, while a neighboring state doesn't implement that requirement until 75. Some states mandate vision screening at every renewal after 65. Others only require it every other cycle. A handful require physician certification automatically at a certain age, while others only trigger medical review if a red flag appears during the in-person visit. And yes, there are still states that have not yet adopted some of these expanded measures, but the broader pattern is clear. More legislators are reviewing senior driver policies every year as the over 65 population grows faster than any other demographic group. This variability is exactly why relying on word of mouth is risky. What happened to your neighbor in Arizona may have no relevance to your renewal in Ohio. Policies change quietly, websites update without fanfare, clerks receive new procedural memos that never make the evening news. The only reliable source is your state's official DMV website or information line. And when you check, don't just skim. Look specifically for sections labeled senior drivers, age-based renewal requirements, or medical review program. If you call, write down the date, the name of the representative if available, and what they told you. If the website lists downloadable forms, save them, print them, put them in your renewal folder. Preparation removes uncertainty. And that brings us to the most important part of this entire conversation. What you can do right now, not when your license is about to expire, not after you receive a reminder notice, but now. Step 1 is simple but powerful. Check your license expiration date today, not later. Many drivers assume they have more time than they do. If you're within 12 months of renewal and you're in an age group affected by new rules, you should already be preparing. Step 2, verify your state's age-specific requirements. Don't guess, confirm. Are you required to renew in person? Is a vision screening mandatory at every renewal? Is medical certification required at your age? Knowledge eliminates surprises. Step 3, schedule a comprehensive eye exam at least 6 months before renewal. Ask your eye doctor to test peripheral vision and contrast sensitivity, not just standard acuity. If there are early signs of decline, corrective lenses, updated prescriptions, or even simple adjustments like anti-glare coatings can make a measurable difference. Discovering a correctable issue early keeps you from scrambling under deadline pressure. Step 4. If medical certification may apply in your state, talk to your primary care physician ahead of time. Ask whether any of your current conditions or medications could trigger additional review. If you're managing diabetes, ensure blood sugar logs are stable. If you've had cardiac issues, confirm follow-up documentation is current. If you use a CPAP machine for sleep apnea, maintain compliance records. Being able to demonstrate consistent management of a condition can influence how a form is completed. Step 5. Assemble your documentation. Now, create a clearly labeled folder containing your current license, social security card, proof of residency, birth certificate or passport if required, and any relevant medical paperwork. Check your state's list of acceptable documents and make sure what you have matches exactly. If something is missing, order it early. Replacement social security cards and certified birth certificates can take weeks. Step 6, prepare for the in-person visit strategically. Schedule your appointment, if available, during a time of day when you feel most alert. Get adequate sleep beforehand. Eat before you go. Bring your glasses, even if you only use them occasionally. Approach the visit calmly and methodically. The goal is not speed, the goal is clarity. And step 7, this one is often overlooked. Begin thinking proactively about long-term transportation flexibility. This does not mean surrendering your independence, it means strengthening it. Identify alternative options in your community now, whether that's ride-sharing services, senior transportation programs, or trusted friends and family. When alternatives are in place, even if you rarely use them, you approach renewal with confidence rather than fear. You are choosing safety from a position of control, not reacting under pressure. All of this may sound like a lot, but when broken into manageable steps spread over months rather than days, it becomes entirely doable. And more importantly, it shifts the experience from reactive to proactive, from anxiety to assurance, from feeling targeted to feeling prepared. Because at the end of the day, these rules are not just bureaucratic hurdles. They intersect with something deeply personal. Your sense of independence, your mobility, your dignity, and that's what we need to talk about next. Let's address the emotional side of this because ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. For many people, a driver's license is not just a laminated card. It represents freedom. It represents self-reliance. It represents decades of competence, raising families, building careers, running errands, taking road trips, showing up for life without asking permission. So when new rules appear that single out drivers over 65, it can feel like your experience is being discounted. It can feel like a quiet accusation, and that frustration is understandable. You've driven safely for years. Maybe you've never had a serious accident. Maybe you're the person other family members rely on when the weather turns bad. So the idea of additional screenings or medical forms can feel unnecessary, but here's the perspective that matters. Driving has always been a responsibility measured against risk. The vehicle you operate weighs thousands of pounds. Decisions happen in seconds. Conditions change quickly. And while experience is an enormous asset, biology does not negotiate. Vision changes gradually, reaction time slows subtly, certain medications affect alertness more than we realize. These shifts aren't character flaws, they're natural processes. The purpose of screening, at least in principle, is not to strip independence from capable drivers. It's to identify genuine risk before tragedy occurs. Because the alternative scenario is far worse, an accident that injures someone else, legal consequences, financial liability, the emotional weight of knowing something preventable happened. I have spoken to families on both sides of that situation, and the aftermath is devastating. In many of those cases, the warning signs existed months or even years before the incident. They just weren't addressed. There is a quiet strength in choosing safety over pride, in saying, if there's something I need to adjust, I will. That might mean updating glasses. It might mean limiting nighttime driving. It might mean renewing more frequently so you have regular check-ins. For a small number of people, it may eventually mean transitioning away from driving entirely. But doing so on your terms with planning and dignity, rather than after a crisis, forces the decision. Independence is not defined by never changing. It's defined by adapting wisely, by staying informed, by preparing before pressure builds, and that is exactly what you're doing by watching this and taking it seriously. So let's bring this full circle. 3 major rule shifts are affecting drivers 65 and older across many states. Enhanced vision screenings that go beyond the old eye chart, mandatory in-person renewals that include observational assessments, and medical certification requirements in certain jurisdictions. The specifics vary depending on where you live, but the direction is consistent. More screening, more frequent renewal, more documentation. The difference between walking into the DMV confident or walking in blindsided comes down to preparation. Check your expiration date early, verify your state's exact rules, schedule comprehensive vision exams ahead of time, talk to your physician proactively if medical forms may apply, organize your documents carefully. Approach the renewal process as a demonstration of your continued capability, not as an obstacle. Because the goal isn't just keeping a license, it's preserving mobility, safety, and peace of mind. When you understand the system, you move through it with strength instead of surprise. And that means if you ever find yourself standing at that DMV counter, it won't be a moment of shock. It will be a formality. You were fully ready.